Pat yourself on the back because you are right here, right now, for a reason. Welcome to the On Purpose podcast, where together we will empower ourselves and others to live lives with more passion and purpose. How you doing this morning, Jared?
I'm fantastic, Ali. How are you, my friend?
Fantastic.
You got some good energy this morning. You woke up in a good frame of mind?
I really did. Just had a lot of adversity yesterday, and I guess some growth, and just ready to attack the day.
And I love it, and I think that ties into a lot of the podcasts we've done recently where, you know, especially like last week, we talked about being your authentic self and how you usually find that on the backside of adversity. Mm-hmm. You find out a ton about yourself. And, so I think it's great going through that and then seeing that reemergence.
Yeah, definitely. I enjoyed your stories on how to be your authentic self. I hope all of our listeners do their purposeful practice. Here's a quick purposeful practice review. On my end, so the practice was, who do you want to be? Who is your authentic self? What are your values, dreams, and priorities in life? And where have you not been your authentic self, and how can you improve? So if you haven't got that in, make sure to get it in. For me, I described, if you tuned in the last episode, that I found a lot out about myself through adversity. I know that I always want that one of my core values is honesty, loyalty. I want to be honest and straightforward and vulnerable with people close to me. I want to inspire. I want to love. I want to be a leader. I want massive success, and I'm not ashamed to say that. I want massive success, and I want to influence 1 billion people at a minimum with the messages that I want to spread. So I have massive dreams, and one place that I can be a little bit more authentic is in my own business. I have really struggled a lot with putting my own face out there, my own stories, and have had this fear of always I need to keep it separate. But, you know, as truly the face of the company, I think that I can be a little bit more authentic and tell more stories and share more, and that's definitely coming with our new rebrand of Be Your Best. So that was my review.
Yeah, and I love that. And I hope the listeners and community that are following us appreciate just the honesty and the fact that we are literally on the journey with you all. And there's so many podcast options and learning materials out there for you, and we're humbled that you choose to come with us because we're all learning together.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll tell you, for me, I'm in a big season of evaluating what kind of parent I've been. Because my kids are all about to leave home and move on in their lives. And I think you unintentionally parent not as authentically, at least for me. I parented not as authentically as I should have, meaning you kind of fall into roles you're supposed to play as a dad. You're not supposed to be emotional. You're always the strong protector of the family. And looking back, I really wish I'd have spent more time showing them that, like, even though I am big and strong and I do things that are scary and that not everybody will do, I still hurt at times and I'm still sad at times, and it's okay to be all those things. So that I'm spending a ton of time really talking to my kids about that and really hoping that it's not so late that I can't set them up to be a 360 person, not just a 180 that you think people are supposed to see.
Yeah, and it's not. Yeah, it's never too late. And what an opportunity now to be able to realize that and be even more authentic, you know, especially in a pivotal time of your children's lives to where you still got 2 in high school, one barely out of the house. I mean, super young. And frankly, me being closer to your kids' age than you are, I can tell you from firsthand experience that I think that those are some of the most formative years, that kind of 18 to 25-year-old stage. So definitely not too late, Jared. So no need to worry about that.
I appreciate it. So make sure, listeners, you're getting in that purposeful practice so that we can give you some feedback, some follow-up, and just share, because really the value of what we are doing, I'll be honest with you, is not the opinions. It's not business tips, because to me, those are strategies and tactics which will evolve over time. We may have an opinion 2 shows ago that in 5 years is obsolete because technology changed or human nature's changed. But what will never go away is the community you build. And that's the strength of the On Purpose podcast, is our community. If you look at Ali and our personal strengths are building communities. Then when we come together, it's that much stronger. So do your purposeful practice, get it in. We have a workshop coming up in October where you can come work in person with us, really meet each other and collaborate and really get that sense of what you belong to, which ties in perfectly to today's episode, because we're going to talk about communities. And again, that is our strength.
Yeah. Today's episode is titled The Value of Community. And a lot of us don't necessarily have specific communities that we are required to participate in after school, right? After school or college. I mean, you have your workplace, but time and time again, we hear people reference the glory days or back in the fun times or whatever it is, usually referring to college or high school experience. Why do you think that is? Because that's when they were in a community. We are social animals. Even if you're the most introverted person on the planet, you are a social animal. You need social interaction. You need community. That's why the most harsh punishment on a human being is solitary confinement, because we need to interact. So let's talk about, why is community so important, Jared? Why is that a vital piece of being a human being?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. We are hardwired. We're social animals. We're not meant to be all by ourselves, all alone, in isolation. And I hadn't even thought of the analogy you just gave, but that's fantastic. Yeah, you look at if you're the worst criminal in the world, what is our punishment to you? Is to put you in isolation. We rob you of the sense of belonging with other human beings. We take that away from you. Because we're so natured, we thrive off of community. Now, it looks different for everybody, but deep down inside, no matter what you say about, I don't care if people like me, I don't care, you care. We all care. We all want to be loved. We all want to belong. And we all want to have a sense of purpose that our lives matter. And that's what I drive from community. And those are the communities I want to be in, is that at the end of the day, what we do matters. And if you don't belong where you're getting that feedback, it's easy to get lost. It's easy to not see the importance that each of us have in the world. And yeah, we're one person, and in the microcosm of the world, we're a grain of salt. Man, we're an important grain of salt to the people that are the grains of salt right around us.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what I really love about community, is the sense of belonging and the sense of knowing that what we're doing is actually making a difference.
Yeah, definitely.
What about you?
Why do I think community is so important? Well, I think, honestly, I agree with just about everything you said. I know that's boring, but it frankly is our own world, right? We're so privileged to have the internet and so many ways to connect today that we can find, no matter who you are, you can find a community that's for you. There are people that are interested in the same things that you are somewhere on this planet. Even if it's not next door, you can find people online. You can find communities. You can find similar passions or interests if you go out and seek that community and participate in community. I think a lot of people don't realize that if you're going to be joining a community and you want to receive all of the great benefits from being a part of a community, you need to bring something to the table, right? Like at a potluck, you're not going to show up and eat all the food and not bring anything. You got to bring something to that potluck, to that community, and you have to make the effort to go be a part of it. And I think that's when you start feeling all the benefits. I hear of a lot of people talk. A lot of my friends have talked about how it's difficult to make friends after college or after school, right? When you're in that environment, aside from your work friends, that's kind of all you have. Half people don't even like what they do or their job, so you probably won't like too many of your work friends, right? If you're not passionate about what you're doing. If both of you guys aren't passionate about what you're doing, then that's probably negative community. But I challenge people. I'm like, well, what are you doing to go make friends, right? Where are you taking an initiative to go bring value and be a part of another community, right? I'm grateful to be a part of Trials MMA, of Toastmasters, of the amazing On Purpose community that we've created, that grad community that we've created. But why? Because I go in and I put in the work and I bring value and I'm taking action to be a part of a community. So I think that's one thing that we have to realize is why a part of why community is so important. Well, it's good for you, but also it keeps you accountable.
Yeah.
Right. You have to show up and it keeps you sharp. You have to bring value when you're a part of community. You have to pull your weight.
Yeah. And I think that's the important thing. I think one of the downfalls of people in today's world is they look at communities from a position of what do I get from belonging here? What can you give me? And there are times to take from your community, absolutely 100%. I'm in communities where at times I will take from the community, whether it's, a time in need, maybe I need reassurance because I'm doubtful, maybe I'm thinking about quitting because nothing seems to go right, so I lean on my community of fellow believers and people. So at that time, I'm taking your energy, but I'm always conscious that I need to repay it. So show up in your communities asking not what you can take, but what can I give? Mm-hmm. What can I bring to this community? And you will always get more out of giving than you will from taking. And I've found that to be true in my life. And, there's so many books that talk about the value of giving. And it's true in your community. So for many of us, we simply have lost, to me, it seems like we've lost how to get in communities. Mm. Where do we find these communities? Mm-hmm. Because technology, as great as it is, sometimes it's isolating, and we fall into the trap of, I'll just go on Facebook and I'll see what everybody's doing. Well, that doesn't fulfill all your needs. It certainly plays a role, mm-hmm. but we need that human interaction too. We need that commitment. Like you said, if you're going to be on there, comment, be part of the engagement. Don't just scroll through.
Yeah, and even though we're in a digital world, nothing compares to in-person interaction, being in the same room with someone, being able to shake hands, give hugs, communicate face-to-face. That's true community. Don't get me wrong. Digital community is great too, but there's something about consistently being in the presence of people that you love and care about and that you share a common goal with, a common purpose. Yeah. Right? Every community is going to have a purpose or a goal, and people coming together to strive towards that common goal and common purpose is what builds community, right? So being aware of what the goal and purpose is extremely important, because if that goal or purpose doesn't resonate with you, then you're not in the right community. You need to be passionate, or at least have some passion towards what the objectives of the community are, and that's how you can figure out what you will give because you want to give that. There should never be we're so grateful and privileged to where we don't have to be in any communities or groups that we don't want to be. Maybe some of you younger listeners, your parents tell you have to be in school. That's a different story. Yep. But for the most part, you don't have to be a part of things that you don't want to be a part of. Even your job. I know some of you may think, oh, well, I have to be in this job. No, you don't. You really don't. You can leave. You can go do something else. The world is so abundant with many various communities out there that you can go find something that resonates with you down to your core, the core of your soul, and you can go bring value in there. So let's move on, Jared, to when we are in communities, right? Yeah. I'm sure most people can at least think of some type of community that you're in. If you're not in the workforce and you're a student, you have a community at school. Right, if you're in the workforce, you have a community at work. Those are very basic, but you can think of examples of other communities as well. But in our communities, do you think? How about for you, Jared? Do you believe that you're more of a giver or taker? Maybe you have some stories or examples of both. At one time when you were more of a taker, because in my opinion, you're definitely more of a giver, at least in the communities that I interact with you. I
appreciate that, but I think like many things, there's seasons in your life. And I would tell you that in my 20s, I was much more of a taker, for sure. Because I'll be honest, I didn't know what I had to give. Right? And I think that is an important identity, is when you're like, and why many people today struggle is they don't know what their gifts are. They don't know what they bring. Because we're in such a comparison society. We're in such they're doing all this. They look so great. I'm not that thin. I'm not that pretty. I don't have that fancy car. And in my 20s, we didn't have social media, but we still had comparison as normal. So I took from everybody in my 20s. I took from relationships. I took from my employer. I had no intention of giving. I was very selfish. And I don't think that's abnormal, because I think in your 20s, if you look at that 10-year period, you're going from home to college or to workforce. You're starting to figure out who you are. So now for many of you, you're going to make the most money you've ever had in your life. So now you have some financial responsibilities. How do you spend that money? Are you saving, investing? Or are you blowing it? I was blowing it, which to me is also taking, right? Because I'm not giving smartly by saving my money to set my family up for the future. We were spending on things we didn't need. Relationships, I literally go back to, I didn't know what I had to give. So I think by default, then you become kind of defensive and you take. Over the course of my life, gaining experience, really becoming comfortable with who I am and who I'm supposed to be, now I find that the communities I feel best in and I thrive in are when we are giving. Which, I'll be perfectly honest, is one of the main reasons I decided to leave my police career after 21 years was I didn't like being around many of the people. And, I know there's a lot of cops that listen to this, and I love a lot of you. And there's some of you that literally all you saw was the negative. All day, every day, all you talked about was everything that was wrong, and it drained me. And I knew that I couldn't be who I was supposed to be if 10 hours a day I was around people that just constantly pulled me down. So I love to give. And it's interesting because preparing for this podcast, I thought back to when did I know I liked to give? And I knew it as a little kid. I just didn't know how to do it. And the one example I kept coming back to was I would always open my presents last at Christmas. Always. And it wasn't because I wanted to be the center of the stage. Like my brother and sister, I wanted them to go and get lost and then everybody watch me. I didn't care about that. But I truly enjoyed watching them open presents. And then I was thinking back, I was like, I've always known that. I've always enjoyed giving more than getting. I just didn't know how to do it at certain places in my life.
Yeah.
Whereas now I feel very much like this is how I give. Mm-hmm. And I can apply it in multiple formats.
Yeah, and I love how you said that you didn't know what you had to give. And I know for me, for a long time, I didn't know either. And I'm still figuring that out.
Sure.
And I think that is probably a big thing that holds a lot of people back from really engaging and sharing. And we've talked about this before, right? I have average about 300 people or more a day that watch my stories, and I hardly ever see any of them sharing anything.
Yeah.
But they're on social media, and I constantly try and encourage people, share, put something out there, speak your voice, speak your mind, share a thought, share an idea. And so many of us don't know what we have to give, right? And so I think that's awesome that you brought that up, because I've been there to where I've been confident about myself and thought I had things, but also not really aware of anything that I have to give. I mean, this podcast was a perfect example, right? I'm so humbled and overwhelmed by the positive feedback that we get that is impacting people. That surprises me sometimes, and I'm like, wow. We actually have something to give just by consistently coming up with topics to speak about in depth every week. And we realize that through taking action.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for an example. That is a perfect example of why community is so important. For a lot of my career, I did stuff like this. I did presentations to different work groups to build teams, to help supervisors lead better, to help people find courage and their purpose and remind them over the course of their career. But this podcast wasn't even my idea. It was literally a member of one of the communities I built who valued the messages, who valued our talks, who would remember a talk I did 5 years prior and come up to me and be like, do you remember when you said this? Well, this is how I'm applying it. And he constantly bugged me to be like, dude, you got to do a podcast. You got to get out there. I'm listening to other podcasts. You got to do this.
Really? I don't think I've heard this story.
Yeah. So Tim, he trains at Trials with us. I mean, he's definitely the guy behind all the videos and the podcasts because he's pushed me to get out there. So if I hadn't been in a community, what would I have done? Why? So that's the value of community, like you hit on earlier. It helps keep you accountable. Sometimes they will see things in you that you've forgotten were there. And that's why it's important to belong and to give, because, I gave to this community. So what did I get in return? Well, now all of a sudden I got pushed to get out of my comfort zone to start moving here. And now whole new doors have opened to me, whole new worlds. And then on the flip side, how do I give back? Why I go to lunch with you and I'm like, hey, dude, I have this. People are pushing me to do this, and I think you'd be the perfect partner in crime, so let's do this together. And now you get the opportunity to expand. And then in turn, we give it to our community members, and we expect them to share with their community members. And it just, when you give, like, it's that momentum snowball where it just continues to go because it feels good. And I think that's why a lot of people don't share on social media. They don't let you know on that like, dude, I love what you're doing, right? Because we have this weird idea at times that if I celebrate you, it means I'm lesser, right? If I tell you, dude, you're doing so good, it means that I'm not doing good. And I want to really reframe that thought, because there's so much successes and abundance in the world. And there's enough for you, there's enough for me, there's enough for all of you listening. But what won't happen, and I will tell you factually, you will never get to where you want to be by trying to tear everybody else down.
Yeah.
Right? And there's communities that are like that. Like, go on social media, watch the news. Like, literally, their message is about tearing down, tearing down, tearing down. Well, the reality is, we can all get there by building each other up. And when you get there and you do that, when I get to my goals by bringing everybody with me, it's far more satisfying. It's far more worth the journey and the struggles, because I know, like, wow, look at all these people coming with me. You get there by yourself, what the fuck are you going to do now? Yeah, you have the biggest building in town because you tore everybody else's building down.
Yeah.
But who do you celebrate with? What are you going to do?
And that's extremely unlikely to happen on that path. And if it does, you're probably going to get torn down yourself, right?
Why?
And
Why are you going to get torn down?
Because you tore people down along
Because
the
you're
way.
attracting other dudes that want to come tear shit down.
Exactly.
You're building, and you're helping people feel good about themselves and see what their possibilities are. You build together. When you get to the end, what do you have? You have a freaking community. You have all kinds of people that are better than they were before they met you.
And it's part of our purpose. It's part of our purpose to give back, right? That's always a step after reaching mega success. You can watch any extremely successful person. They all have their duties to give back, right? To teach others. Because we're human beings. We always want more. Once we reach that level of success, it's what's next. Okay, I got here. Now what? To where when you achieve all of your dreams, there's actually something, dream PTSD, right? You got there, and it's like, now what do? I achieved the only goal I ever set for myself, and a big piece of that, probably the most important piece, is giving back to your community, giving back to people on the journey behind you that may be going through similar paths that you went on. And one thing I'd like to add is that nobody in the On Purpose community is at that low level of vibration. You wouldn't be listening to this podcast if you were, of tearing others down.
Right.
You are a giver. If you're listening to this On Purpose podcast, you're looking to live your life with more purpose. It means you're already a giver. However, I know that some of you may be thinking right now, well, what do I have to give? I'm not sure what I can contribute to the community. And maybe your purposeful practice is going to help you figure that out. But one thing that you can start by, you don't have to go and be this vocal person and bring gifts or whatever. One thing you can start giving is just your presence, just showing up. Start there. That is truly a gift. The gift of your presence means something to so many people, whether you realize it or not. And I've referenced this book before, but there's a book, an awesome book called The 5 Love Languages. It's not only for your loving relationship, but for all relationships. And the author, I think Gary Chapman, references the love language of quality time. It's not one of my primary love languages, but I do appreciate it. But there's so many people out there who just want you to show up, who just want you to be there. The gift of your time, your presence, is already giving so much. So those of you who are maybe thinking, like, I don't know what to give, just you showing up and giving your time and presence is huge, and that's a perfect place to start.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, listen to last week's episode about how to be your authentic self. We talked a lot about who do you want to be. Well, who do you want to be is your gifts. Mm-hmm. And it's easy to start tying in, which is why that practice is important, because it builds, it creates momentum for you to continue to develop. So what do you think is the key, Ali, to showing up in your communities? Like what are the keys that you figure in your life when you're getting into these different groups? Like, what are you looking for, and how do you make sure you do it all the time?
Can you say the question again?
Yeah. So communities, right? A lot of people will belong to communities for very short periods of time. They'll bounce in, they'll bounce out, they'll bounce in, they'll bounce out. Mm-hmm. How do you know, I guess, let me rephrase it, if the community is right for you?
Okay.
And then how do you make sure you get to bring value to the community? Like, what practices do you have, or what thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. So first and foremost, just like with most things we talk about with on-purpose practice, is taking inventory, right? Observing, showing up, and observing what the community does. So here's a perfect example. I've been involved with Toastmasters International. There's, I believe, over 16,000 clubs around the world for 7 years. And I've moved a lot over the past 7 years. So every time I move to a different city, I go check out some local Toastmasters clubs. I'd go to multiple ones and figure out which group has the best culture for me, the one that I would feel best at. Even though they're all the same organization and the same meeting format, I would observe, what are the people like? What kind of speeches are they giving? Who are these types of people? I would observe, take inventory of what they're doing and how I felt. Was I laughing? Was I having a good time? Was I enjoying myself there? So first, take an inventory, seeing who the people are, what the community is about. I already knew, hey, I'm here to develop my public speaking and my leadership skills. So that was a check right there. I already knew the objective of Toastmasters International. Now the culture, the people, how I feel. Observing that, and then how I knew what I was going to bring to the table is I was going to bring my best effort. I knew that in me developing myself and doing my best with my speeches, coming and crushing it, that other people would be inspired, sharing my stories and getting up there. And I'm saying this not to brag, but to show that when you do show up, people notice. And I've been a president of 2 different Toastmasters clubs, not ever because I said I want to be president, but because the former president saw something in me as a new member, say, hey, you're a fantastic leader. I would like to nominate you as president of this club. And these are communities that are very different from my background, right? Like the club that I was asked to be a president right now is mainly people 50 and up, Caucasian, and just very not like me, right? And I was asked because I saw what the community was doing. I decided I'm going to bring my A game. I'm going to show up, be consistent, and me just taking care of what I had to do. And of course, being my authentic self of trying to inspire, learning about other people, that led to being asked, hey, will you please lead this club? Primarily made up of 50-plus-year-old white people who are very different from you because you possess these leadership qualities. So that's a good example of how I would evaluate certain types of communities and how I knew I was giving something because I would give all of me.
Yeah. So let me follow up with that, because I think that's an important point for listeners out there is finding that community, putting yourself out there. So did they ask you then, like probably after the first meeting, to be president?
No.
Oh, no?
No.
How many meetings do you think it was?
Probably like 50.
50 meetings.
Probably like
that's the point I want to make. If you want to belong to a community, you want to have influence in a community, you got to be consistent. Mm-hmm. You got to be consistent to earn people's trust. And we drop the ball nowadays because we want that instant gratification. This example is perfect. He went into a room where on first blush, if you just surveyed the room and just looked at people, you'd say, okay, he's the outlier. He's much younger. He's from a different background. He doesn't look like he has a lot in common to these folks. So if he walks in and tries to say, okay, right now I'm here, I want to be president, right? Well, now they're defensive. Now they're going to look and be like, what is going on? You got to earn people's trust. And that's a process of time, which will only happen when you show up consistently. I guarantee you right now we have listeners out there that are thinking like, well, I tried to join this community. I tried to join that. I didn't fit in. And I want to ask you, how much time did you give it?
Yeah.
How much did you show up consistently? This is episode 27, which means we are showing up consistently every week for 6 months. Right now, we are just starting to earn the trust of many people that we will continue to show up for them. We won't let them down. We won't miss episodes. We've made this a priority, and the numbers show. Every week we get more and more viewers. We get more and more shares because we're earning a trust. So remember, being in a community is a long-term play. It's a long-term commitment to each other. And so we can't go into communities and immediately think, okay, if I join this, I'm going to get immediate results tomorrow. Well, you may learn something, you may start to grow, but it takes time and it takes patience, and you need to be there for the right reasons. Because if you're not your authentic self, if you're just there to take, you're going to stand out like a sore thumb to a lot of communities.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's why it's so important to make sure that the purpose and the objective of the community resonates with you. You want to be there, and it's something that you enjoy doing. I would have never become the president of a club if I wasn't interested in developing my public speaking and leadership skills. That's the only reason, is because I had an interest.
And for me, quite honestly, one of the best examples of community for me was buying the gym. I wanted a place where I could go and people like-minded that wanted to push themselves physically, but also realize that the body is controlled by what the mind thinks. And when we think clearly, we think positively, we think of all the possibilities, not the limits, our bodies will follow. I wanted to have a place where we could do that all the time.
Yeah.
And that was it. Like, I love jiu-jitsu. I love mixed martial arts. I love the physical nature. But that wasn't my main purpose for buying the gym. My purpose for owning the gym was I wanted a place where I could go to feel like this every day. And I wanted a place other people that liked this stuff could come to feel good about themselves every day.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's amazing. I'm glad you did.
Thanks,
glad you did, because I'm really grateful for the Trials Tribe, as I like to call it. So, Jared, how do you find your communities, especially now that you just retired from a 21-year career? You are now spending your days very differently as opposed to 10 hours a day in a community that you were constantly in. You have the gym now. We've created and started a beautiful on purpose community. But how do you now, especially after leaving your career, how do you go about finding communities that you want to be a part of now?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time looking and trying to connect with people that are where I want to get or have done what I'm trying to do so I can learn from them. And I love social media. Those of you guys that are following us probably get a good feel that we're very loud on our social media. We're very out there, and we're not afraid of that. So I will use my social media to go to the next level, which is to develop personal connections. So, like this afternoon, I'll have a call with a guy I met off LinkedIn who's got a great podcast. He's authoring books. He's a retired police officer, because that's that next step. And that's kind of what you talked about earlier, being engaged. To me, social media should lead to personal connections. That's my goal. And so I spend a lot of time there because I love it, because I can literally narrow down the field of who's in this community, who they're givers. I can show up. I can give my opinion. I can learn from them. But I have to be very purposeful on it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of the difference is when you go to a workplace, you can be accidental about who you're going to spend your day with because they're just going to pass by you. But when you jump out on your own, you have to be very intentional on where you're going to put your time and who you're going to spend it with.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the whole purpose of our podcast, right? To live life with more purpose, because we have so many distractions, so many things going on to where it's easy, and the normal default is to just go through the motions of the day, right? To just kind of wake up and go through it and we don't really have to have intention to survive.
Right.
We're in a day and age to where we can get away with doing the least, doing so little and survive. So we're not being pushed to live with more intention. So I'm glad you said that, because that's something that I try and do every single day. And I see a lot of us struggle with that, including me, of having purpose and intention.
Yeah. And I think, for me, knowing that my future success and our future success depends on me getting up and going after it every day drives me, right? And that goes back to, I forget what episode it was, but like identifying your purpose. What are your gifts and what are your motivations and where are you headed? Being crystal clear on that means I'm okay being uncomfortable. I'm okay doing things and failing and learning and trying again and failing again. But I'm okay with that because I have a community around me that supports it. And I'm not worried about the two guys that think I'm an idiot and make stupid comments, because I have 20 that are like, dude, like, keep going, like, you're so close. And that's where I want to tie all this back to that community piece, is like, I'm only able to take the risk. I'm only able to create podcasts and to share journeys with you because I'm around people that are also doing that kind of stuff. I intentionally put myself in communities of people that don't view failure as an end all and don't view it as detrimental to the rest of your life, but more as a learning process. And that's not an accident, because there's just as many communities out there that want to naysay everything, want to tear everybody down and talk, trash on everybody. So now if I didn't know where I belonged, I went to that group, well, I probably wouldn't do what I'm supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And I would never live my life to its fullest and fulfill the promises I made to myself many years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, the communities that we choose to be a part of will profoundly impact the people that we become. So it's very important to realize the value of community and be selective, be strict when it comes to choosing what community you're going to be a part of, because it will have a profound impact on you. And it's very important to use purpose when selecting your communities.
Yeah, and so I want to ask you something, Ali. Is it okay to outgrow a community?
100%.
And how do you know when you've outgrown it?
Well, you've outgrown it when there's nothing else for you to give. For sure when there's nothing else for you to give. And then I think secondly, when there's nothing else for you to gain. If you have truly given all that you can and there's nothing else for you to gain, then I think it's time to leave that community. I'm trying to think.
So it's okay to look selfishly at that.
Of course. I mean, you have to be selfish. You have to be selfish because you must be selfish in order to be selfless.
Yeah.
If you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not constantly growing and improving, then you're not in a very good position to help others grow and improve. You have to take care of your personal journey first. So there's no reason that you should be giving a lot of yourself to a community if you're not gaining anything from it. Now, you could be gaining maybe things on a smaller scale than you're giving, and that's okay, as long as you're still gaining. But if you're not gaining anything from a community, then get out.
Yeah.
There's no point.
And I think that's interesting because that's how I view it as well. And how I gauge when it's time to move on from a community is how I feel, which is kind of different than how I approach a lot of my life. Like, okay, what do I think is going to happen here? Is this a calculated risk worth taking? I'm very logistical. But my communities are all based on feel. If I spend time in a certain group and I leave exhausted, and not exhausted because I gave you all I had to give. Like when I coach young police officers and we coach this workshop, we will leave exhausted because we're going to give you everything we have to help you live a better life. That's a good exhaustion. I leave like exhausted but so excited. When I leave exhausted, like oh my God, that was so, like, that was the worst. It was a long, then I got to get out of that group. Mm-hmm. So I literally go off how I feel. If I feel vibrant and I feel valued and I feel like it's a mutual exchange, give and take, I stay. But if I'm in a group and I'm like, man, every time I leave this group, I just feel drained. I feel unmotivated. I feel the complete opposite of how I thought I should feel, then it's a good indicator that maybe that's not the right group for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and you made me think of something that I've noticed in Toastmasters International, and I've actually brought it up, to where a lot of longtime speakers, there's people with like, I've been in Toastmasters for 30 years, 40 years, and they have, the highest achievements in Toastmasters. I've seen a lot of those people at these higher level conferences as I've progressed in the organization and thought, why? Why are you still doing this? Like, you don't need that anymore. And I look at the achievements that they've achieved outside of Toastmasters, not very impressive.
Yep.
There was at a district conference, they gave a speech. One of the workshops that they had was using Toastmasters outside your career. And it was kind of geared towards entrepreneurs. And I was like, hell yeah, but dude, I was like, get this guy off the stage and let me talk. He was talking about a CEO is like the president of your club. The treasurer is like your finance person in the business. And I was like, what is he talking about? And I realized that a lot of these people who have been in the organization for so many years, they already outgrew it. They just never left.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do that. They stay in a community because it's comfortable, because then they feel good, but it's not challenging them anymore. They're not growing. And I remember asking the district, the district director. So he oversees like Nebraska, Colorado, everything. We were having drinks at the bar after the 3-day conference. I was like, why aren't there more millionaires in Toastmasters? Right? Toastmasters possess one of the most valuable skills, and that's the ability to effectively communicate, present with passion, with vocal variety, with everything. They're amazing speakers, and most people I see there are in a corporate job. Nothing wrong with a corporate job, but all these people have extremely high achievements in Toastmasters. Outside of Toastmasters, very, very mediocre, mid-level when they possess this amazing skill. So I think that's a perfect example of, realize that all good things come to an end. You were a great example of that when we had this Circle of Five mentorship group, and you're like, yeah, I think I'm going to end it soon. I was like, really? Why? He's like, well, we've just kind of given all that we can give, man. And yeah, it was a good run, and just the value that we're all getting from it has started to decline, and that really resonated with me, because I was like, wow, there does come a time to where it's not worth it anymore. The world is so abundant that we should explore. We should go be part of other communities. We should leave certain communities that no longer serve us, even if they serve us in a little way. If we think we can give more and earn more in a different community, there's nothing wrong with leaving that and trying it out. So I'm glad you asked that question, because that really does bring up a good point. It's important to not just stay in a community because it gets comfortable.
And I think that's where people drop the ball a lot and really get stagnant, is they're like, well, I've always been here, so I always have to stay here. And you don't. You can move on. It doesn't mean you don't like these people anymore. It doesn't mean you can't jump back in and still offer advice every now and then, or your experience. But remember, if you stay doing what you've always done, that's all you'll become. Mm-hmm. And our growth is when we experience new things and new ideas, and we learn differently, we move forward. And that reminds me, I did a workshop for a doTERRA business, and one of the ladies there talked about how she wanted to move beyond a certain group in her life, a certain group of people that kind of limited her. And I thought that's interesting, because she sees that they're limiting her. Mm-hmm. She sees that she can't reach her full potential by staying in this group, but yet we sometimes don't have the courage to just go.
Yeah.
And it falls into that safety net. And I want our on-purpose community. I'll be perfectly honest with a lot of you. I don't want you here next year. I mean, I would love you to still tune in and be part, but I'd rather have you as guest next year, talking about what you've taken, learned, and how you applied it to your life and where you're at now.
Yeah.
I don't want people to constantly follow us looking for inspiration, motivation, which lasts for a minute, lasts for 10 minutes, maybe a week, but we're not executing. We're not taking action. We're not taking inventory. We're not practicing so that we move forward. And I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of communities out there that are designed to get you in and keep you.
Right. Yeah, not here. Maybe we want you to check in every once in a while and catch an episode here and there. But if you're constantly submitting your purposeful practice and gaining, we want you to go start your own podcast. Go build your own community. Go achieve your dreams. That's what this.
And then you'll be back as a guest, and you'll share your success stories. Which is why this community is what it is, and why people flock to it. I literally was just showing Ali. I got some voice messages from Ireland this morning about our workshop and the importance of it. And why is that? Because it's a community of givers. It's a community that's not designed to bring you in and keep you trapped right here. We're going to bring you, we're going to share everything we have. Go out and be more successful than us. Go out and be better than we are. If we played a role in that, if we contributed, we're successful. Yes. And that's how we view community. And instead of saying, okay, I want you here, but I only want you about 75% as good as I am, and that other 25% we're going to keep to ourselves so that you always look to us as a master. Right? No, bullshit. That's like Taekwondo from the 70s. Right? Like, I'm going to give you everything we have. You go out, tweak it, make it for you, and be better than us. And then you know what? We're going to celebrate your success because it means we are successful.
Amen. We want you to be your best with purpose. So the value of community, let's talk about practice.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about practice, man, about the value of community. So first part of the purposeful practice this week, ladies and gentlemen, is to identify the dominant communities in your life. And remember, it doesn't have to be an organization like Toastmasters or Trials. It could be your immediate family. You know, that could be the most dominant community. It could be your buddies that you have a beer with every Thursday or whatever. Just identify the dominant communities in your life. Then take inventory of whether you give more or take more from the communities and what the purpose of those communities are.
Yeah.
Right? Why are you in there? Are you giving or taking? And write on that. And then figure out how you feel when you are present within each of these communities. Are you just going because you've been in this community for so long? Is it just second habit? Or when you're present, do you feel incredible? Do you feel amazing? Do you feel down? Write down how you feel. And then most importantly, submit your purposeful practice to us at onpurpose.official@gmail.com.
Love it. I love that practice. I'm excited to see the self-reflection we get from all of you. Team, remember our first On Purpose workshop, October 19th here in Fort Collins, Colorado. You can register off our Eventbrite link. It's on our bio on Instagram. It's on the Facebook page. There are only 20 spots, and I can tell you there's not 20 left as of today, so get on there, register. Come spend 4 hours with Ali, myself, and the rest of our team as we help you create the blueprint to getting your most purposeful life in action. Not in theory, not as a wish list, but literally here's the steps we're going to take and let's get moving. So October 19th, Fort Collins, Colorado. We look forward to having you all with us.
Can't wait.
It's going to be exciting, and there are big things coming for this podcast. So we appreciate you letting us earn your trust by consistently showing up, and you consistently showing up to meet us halfway. So team, remember, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. We will see everybody next week.